the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 to order. Second item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. If you can please rise.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is adoption of agenda. I need a motion to adopt.
Romano adopts the agenda.
Zinner, second.
Okay, motion by Romano, seconded by Zinner. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Chair, this is Commissioner Song.
Hello, Commissioner Song.
Just wanted to let everyone know I was attending remotely from Royal Oak, Oakland County, Michigan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I believe we have Commissioner Kleinfeld as well remotely.
Thank you, Chair. I cannot say I'm attending remotely because there's no state of emergency here, so I'm not technically present.
Chair, point of order. I thought it was only for emergencies that somebody could be voting or attending. Am I mistaken?
To my knowledge, I believe that is our rules.
Chair?
Right, so I can't vote. So
Right.
I'm really technically just here as a bystander. So that's why I didn't say where I was, because I won't be counted as present at this meeting.
Thank you,
Very
Commissioner Kleinfeld. How about Commissioner Song? Same thing? Thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Mai is allowed under the rules of the state. It is a medical issue that she has.
Oh, it is a minute.
And
Sorry. Sorry, Chair.
So basically,
we like hearing Veronica's voice, kind of like an angel
Yes.
coming in from outside the room,
We do miss her.
looking out after us.
There you go.
In case we make any mistakes, she'll point them out. Thank you.
so we have everyone here in attendance, and Commissioner Mai remotely, Commissioner Kleinfeld listening in remotely, and Commissioner Nard not here. So I believe that is everybody, and hopefully we're not going to have any technical problems today because we've already resolved all those. So we have a motion. We have it seconded for adoption of agenda, so please vote.
Commissioner Song, your vote didn't come through on the system. If you could voice vote for me.
Just keep going.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes dated October 5th, 2021. Need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Van Sickle.
Moved by Commissioner Haas, supported by Commissioner Van Sickle. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Item number 5 is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation. It's for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any item that is on today's agenda. There will also be a second opportunity for public participation for anyone that would like to speak about any issue. So anyone from the public that would like to speak about an item on our agenda, please come forward. Going once. Going twice. We'll close public participation. We'll move on to item 6, which is budget reviews. And our first budget review for 6A is Corporation Counsel. We have John Shepka here from Corporation Counsel, I believe, to present his budget to us. Need a motion to receive and file before we begin.
Romano moves.
Zinner, second.
Commissioner Romano makes the motion, supported by Commissioner Farrington. Hello, John.
Mr. Chair, before John begins, each one of these budgets are for receive and file. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I believe this is my 6th year appearing before you, during which I'm not asking for anything more than we had last year. The exception being any increases in wages required by contract or increases in shared services, which are common to all the departments. Be happy to answer any of your questions you have about any of my line items.
That was easy, John.
It's always easy.
So I'm trying to get to that portion of the agenda, and I'm stuck on public participation, so I cannot see any speakers, staff. So we'll go with Commissioner Matuzak. I see her on my screen, but I'm on a different item. Commissioner, you have
That's
the
because I'm
floor.
also on something else.
Okay.
The system is not working today. Just a question.
Yes.
What are charges for services?
Services would be primarily, the biggest charge is our electronic computerized research system.
Okay.
We use Lexis for that. Costs a little over $500 per month, which is a savings of about $3,000 per month over having an actual paper book library. And the paper book libraries are obsolete the second that they're printed.
Nobody has them.
No.
All right, I just was not sure what that cost was.
The rest of the cost would be eaten up with paying court reporters for depositions, the cost of buying a transcript, subpoenaing medical records of plaintiffs, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering what the revenues is. I saw in 2019 there was a $10,000 revenue. What exactly is that, and why the other years are so significantly less?
The revenues brought, well, first, we're not a revenue generating department. We are a revenue saving department. We try to protect the county's checkbook by not spending money in lawsuits. But the revenues we do bring in are twofold. They're either collections from the jail. We do all the collections for reimbursement under Michigan statute. We are able to collect basically room and board from the prisoners. And then FOIA fees, the fees that we charge for FOIA responses. Those are the revenues that we do bring in.
Commissioners, that answer all your questions?
Okay, thank you.
Next on the list is Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, probably more of a question of clarification for me. You said you're not asking for anything other than the normal bump up.
Correct.
Yet when I see under the one document, the goals, item number 3 is restore and increase the 2020 budget to fill in part-time position converting it to full-time, which would mean it's a plus half. So that is more than just the normal bump up.
That is not for the 2022 budget. I'll be back here next year asking for that.
So that's for that, yeah, because I was gonna say in the.
It's a goal. It's out there a few years.
Yeah, the budget you have put forth, actually, okay, as I say, is 2 less than in 2020.
Yeah.
So that's where I was getting confused.
In fact, next year I'll be asking for a little bit more than that goal.
Thank
I've
you.
realigned my goals to ask for more.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I don't see any other speakers for this department. So thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you.
We can please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Next item is item 6B, Ethics Board. Dr. Ambroyer here to speak on that. I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved, Hall.
Moved by Commissioner Nard, supported by Commissioner Haw. Doctor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner. It really is an honor and a privilege to be here. This marks the 48th year that I've been affiliated.
Hit the button.
Hit the button. I'm sorry. Once again, thank you, Commissioner. It really is an honor and a privilege to be here. This marks the 48th year that I've been affiliated with Macomb County. I started in 1973 as a probation officer, then in turn was employed at the Sheriff's Department, served as a jail administrator. In the meantime, I've served in another number of other volunteer capacities with the county, and it really has been an honor and privilege, and most particularly by Executive Mark Hackle, to nominate me to this board to serve as a member of the Ethics Board, which began essentially in 2009, when the Ethics Board came about as a consequence of the Home Rule Charter being voted by the electorate of Macomb County. Since then, there's been three ordinances, and during the past year, the Ethics Board, volunteer members of the Ethics Board, which we are all volunteers, has worked quite closely with Corporation Counsel in a number of regards to enhance and amend the ethics ordinance that you're familiar with. Has also worked very closely with us and helped us tremendously in developing the rules of procedure that coordinate with each of the various ordinances that come into place over the last 9 years. That was accomplished this year. In addition to that, the Ethics Board has worked quite closely with Human Resources and Labor Relations to develop an online training program. In the prior ordinance of 2016-3, there was a considerable amount of confusion and misunderstanding about the ethics ordinance itself, the Home Rule Charter, and the duties and responsibilities of all public servants as defined by the Charter and by the ordinance. And public servants, according to the Charter, are elected officials, appointed officials, and employees of Macomb County. In order to countermand some of that misunderstanding, lack of education and knowledge as to duties and responsibilities under the Charter, as well as the ordinance, the Ethics Board first developed an online training program which worked out quite well, inasmuch as there's over 2,000 county employees working various shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and virtually impossible to deliver any kind of classroom in-service training or professional development. So we were able to do that to clarify both the Charter and that particular ordinance. When the Board of Commissioners adopted and amended a new ordinance, which was 2019-05, I respectfully requested the assistance of Mr. McKinnon to assist the Ethics Board in developing an online training program so as to help elected officials, appointed officials, and all county employees further understand the Charter as well as the ordinance. It's very difficult for people to be held accountable when they haven't been trained or knowledgeable of the Charter or the ordinance itself. Through the cooperation of Human Resources and Labor Relationships, we have an excellent report, developed an online training program that I think you're familiar with. Since that was implemented last year, there were about 1,500 employees who successfully completed the program out of a total of approximately 2,100 full and part-time employees of the County of Macomb. Out of that, unfortunately, there's about 539 employees that still haven't completed the training program, but we're working quite closely with Human Resources and Labor Relations to do that. That's one of our goals for the upcoming fiscal year, to continue doing that. In addition to that, there was 18 elected officials who successfully completed the program, or 44% of the total of 18 that did complete, while there was 70% of the county employees out of the total that successfully completed the program. The Sheriff's Department has a similar curriculum that we developed and implemented, but under a different internet platform. Out of that, there are 525 current employees, according to Sheriff Wickersham, that are employed out of the Sheriff's Department, of which 96% of those employees have successfully completed the program. So I think that speaks very well of not only all county employees who successfully completed the program, but the Sheriff's Department in particular, given what's going on in our current culture relative to police and community relations. And we're proud to be a part of that, work in conjunction with the Sheriff, Human Resources, Labor Relations to accomplish that goal, which we plan to continue to work on in the next coming year. The Ethics Board, being a volunteer organization, has the smallest budget of the county. So in the past year, we have spent probably less than $400. In 2020, we expended $359, although we're requesting $4,700. It's important to kind of understand that when the Ethics Board first began, there was a lot of misinformation. We had some high-profile cases that you may recall, and we really didn't know how to budget or what to anticipate in the future. But working in cooperation with Steve Schmiegel and other members of the Finance Department, we're respectfully requesting another $4,700, which is the same as last year. In the event that we cannot use Corporation Counsel, who has been tremendously helpful over the years in a variety of different ways, particularly in some very delicate ethics complaints that have come forward. In the event that we have to request outside counsel, we might be coming back to the Finance Department and possibly to the Board of Commissioners for financial assistance, but we hope that isn't going to happen because we're focused on preventing ethical misconduct as opposed to reacting to it. So in the event that that might occur, we're just requesting the same amount of budget for fiscal year 2022. With that, I thank you for your privilege of your time. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I do not see any speakers on my screen. Oh. Chair Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ambor, for coming and continuing to serve. Your reputation in the county before you left was outstanding, and you continue to serve us as you've retired faithfully for many years. There's been almost been a revolving door of people coming in and out to serve on that board, the ethics board, but you've been the one point of constance, and you did accomplish a major goal that you've long held, and that was to get a curriculum started across the county, which is now being implemented and used. And that has value, lasting value to us, and probably going to help us in ways that we won't know because someone will do something that'll maybe just trigger a question perhaps. And so I just want to say thank you, take this opportunity to thank you. I don't get to see you up here very often, and I'm glad to see you. It looks like you're doing well, and thank you for all your service to the county, to the taxpayers, to let them know that, we're watching a little bit better than we used to. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Doctor. How you doing?
Thank you, sir.
This is it's a pleasant surprise. So far, we've had 2 budget reviews, no increase in the budget. I like it. Maybe this will be the directive for the other departments to follow. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
I like the low dollar.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Doctor, I'd just like to repeat the words of the chairman. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
And I will tell my older brother that we met each other again.
Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Next item is Executive's Office. Mark Delden speaking on this item. Just need a motion to receive and file.
So moved by Nard.
Good afternoon,
Who made the
Commissioners.
motion? Motion by Commissioner Nard, supported by Commissioner Farrington. You have the floor, Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try to keep with the trend here. So the amended budget, as you'll see on your budget page on C23, if that's the page you're following, the amended budget for 21 is $2,048,000. The recommended budget for 2022 is a grand total of $2,080,000. So it's a difference of $32,000. However, 38,000 of that, well, it's only 32,000, but there's a $38,000 additional charge for internal services, which, as you know, was calculated by finance using the one report that they get. There's there's a decrease in personnel cost, just slightly, and everything else pretty much stays the same. There was a decrease in the pension assumption that is calculated by the finance department, and I think you'll see that across all the departments as you review these budgets. I did want to note that 1 year ago, when we presented the executive office budget, collectively throughout the county, the overall budget that was submitted to the commissioners had about approximately 100 fewer positions in it than it had the previous year. One of those 100 positions was a deputy county executive that the executive determined we should leave vacant to do our part in trying to reduce staff wherever possible for as long as possible. So that position was empty all last year, and the budget that is being proposed to you here today keeps that deputy county executive position vacant for the 2022 year. So we haven't asked for that position back. As you can see, the trend there, the last couple of years, there have been no increases in additional staff, so we're actually one shy, but that's how we're going to move forward. That's how we plan to move forward for 2022. So basically, it's very few changes, and I explained the reasons why, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mark. First speaker is Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, for the benefit of everybody, could you or Steve explain internal services and how it's spread out through the entire budget process?
It's probably best that Steve do that. So.
Well, that was my first question.
And some are saying, oh my God, he's going to ramble on like he normally does. So anyway, internal services are a combination of things. There's liability insurance, which is charged on a percentage of payroll basis. There's the desk phones that are placed in every department, but the bigger charge, probably out of all of the components of that category, is the indirect cost allocation. So we get a consulting company comes in every year and spreads overhead from what we determine or refer to as central service department. So that's my office, HR, corp counsel, executive's office, purchasing, treasurer, facilities, and those sorts of things. So they're overhead charges or cross charges of internal expenses, and that's a large amount of money. So we're charging the cost of the accounting system to every department based on number of employees or percentage of payroll. We're charging space utilization from the facilities department based on department square footage and applied against basically depreciation or cost of the mail room, cost of the treasurer based on transactions in the accounting system.
Thank you.
So, anybody else have
You
any
can bring
questions
Mark
about
back.
that? Okay.
How'd I do?
You did wonderful. One of the other questions I was going to ask was the reduction in headcount. You already indicated that was a deputy county executive that you opted not to fill.
Oh, that's correct. You'll see that reduction took place for 2021. We went down to 9.5 total staff, and that's what we're recommending for next year. Still keeping that position vacant.
Lastly, under contract services, could you explain what basically contract services are being contracted?
If there is a, for example, like a legislative consultant that the executive uses, we have used it for some marketing through Mad Habit. Mad Habit Creative is just the name of a company that the executive has used for the last 10 years to do videos and things like that. Steve, do you have the entire list of what makes that up? I mean, I can get it for you, but
would you please?
It's any outside consultant that he may contract with.
There's some money in there for legal services.
For legal services, whatnot. If we have to go outside, if there's a conflict of interest with Corporation Counsel.
Which we've had.
Yeah, it comes up occasionally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the same lines as Harold's question, contractual services seems pretty broad to me, particularly since we've had at least one contractor I know that's been around a really long time. Mrs. Lane, I'm sort of wondering why that is not a staff position. It exists over multiple budget years. I don't quite, and I know that we've recently hired a number of community outreach specialists.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get a handle of why these are not.
Well, I mean, one of the thought processes is you can oftentimes get an outside consultant that has the expertise that we're looking for, and we don't have the legacy cost. And I think what we're contracting for that position probably totals about $80,000 in a year. But we don't pay benefits on top of that, or we don't have legacy cost. If we had a person like that, given this person's credentials, we're not going to get it for $80,000 a year. So that's some of the mindset that is put into contracting for outside services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mark, for coming. I guess I had two questions. One, you mentioned that the deputy director slot is unfilled, but looking at this, and forgive me, this is my first budget here, it's clerical staff that got reduced by one. Wouldn't that be a manager supervisor that should have been reduced?
It was, yeah, it was, and that's
It's
where.
been 6 people.
Yeah, that's where it should show up, Steve, on the position count. You're right, Commissioner Farrington,
Okay.
thanks for pointing that out. The dollars, though, the dollar savings are reflected in the bottom line.
And I guess that's the next question I have is, maybe I look at this, I look at budgets all the time in my other job. I look at this different. The last 19 months is an aberration. So I go back to 2019 and take the inflationary rate from there. Inflationary rate from that point is 3.44%, and yet personnel over the same time period has gone up 14.5%, and contract services 17.7%, which means 4 times the rate of inflation. I guess I want some justification why we're increasing 4 times the rate of inflation for those costs.
On what line item, Commissioner
That'd be
Farrington?
personnel and contract. So both of them are over 4 times the rate of inflation. Actually, contract is 5 times the rate of inflation in the last 3 years.
Are you going from the 2020
2019
actual?
to 2022.
Okay. Remember, okay, I see what you're saying. I don't have those numbers, but I can work with finance.
Yeah, that'd be the
get
part
you
that I
that.
have a big concern
You got
on,
it.
because we're doing it at a much higher clip than inflation. Thank you.
Okay, you got it.
I see no other speakers on this review. I do have one though for Steve, specifically in regards to the internal services. Steve, if you can just provide us kind of like the calculation on how it's just determined for each one of these departments, or just a generalization.
I can go, yeah, because every department's charge is based on a different allocation statistic. It gets a little complicated, but we can give you the general idea.
The general idea would be great, because I'm just looking at these, and they're obviously all different, so if we're basing it on employee count, that's what I would assume would be a big function of it possibly, but any information on that would be great. Seeing no other speakers, please vote. Thank you, Mark.
Motion passes 12-0.
Next department, Human Resources and Labor Relations. Andrew is here. I just need a motion to receive and file.
Motion received and filed.
Made by Romano, supported by Wallace. Andrew, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair Sabatini, or good afternoon, excuse me. Thank you very much for all of your time today. I will try to be brief, but the first thing that I did want to do is recognize a couple of people who are here with me from my office. I'd asked my leadership team to come. One happens to be on vacation, actually 2 happen to be on vacation. You may not know this in the county, but a lot of times we tack vacations onto our long weekends. So 2 are on vacation, 1 unfortunately had their child was close contact at school, so with COVID-19. So first I want to introduce Brian Jacks, who's our service director with my office. Brian is responsible for half the county departments and making sure that they're running efficiently and smoothly through the Human Resources and Labor Relations Department, and you may recognize him from seeing him around. Also Denise Krasminski, the most important person in our office is Denise, because without her none of us get paid. So Denise is by far the most important person in our office, and she's our operations person. So that goes along with, if you don't get paid, not my fault, call Denise. So I just wanted to recognize them. We've got a great team in Human Resources. We work well together, and frankly, my job is made much easier by the efforts of my staff. So thank you for taking a moment to see them and recognize them. Unfortunately, in human resources and labor relations over the past year, and Commissioner Farrington, I think you're indicating this a little bit, the landscape for our department has changed. It's huge. And so we are looking at a landscape moving forward where the human resources and labor relations issues will be much more complex, much more significant, and the ability to take advantage at times of some of the extra rules that have been put in place and will be put in place over time are something that we have to look out for as a county. So we have requested an increase in our budget for the upcoming year. We had held open a office assistant senior position. That position was one that helped onboard individuals into our county. We did that because we were worried about what our budget might look like at the end of the year, this past year. Fortunately, our budget this past year turned out okay. We didn't see the exceptional downside that we were worried about at the beginning. And I know that we have had a couple of new commissioners on board. It's a little bit of a clunky process. So we want to make sure that that's a better process moving forward, a more streamlined, more efficient, more welcoming process moving forward. And we believe that we need another person to be doing that. So we have asked for that. Also, we have asked for a half-time position in our benefits area. Again, benefits are becoming more complex, more significant. What we do offer here, we're going to continue to hammer at getting our wages increased here in the county because it is my belief, and through our classic comp study, it showed that we were a little bit below market when it comes to our neighbors. However, our benefit packages are fantastic, and we want to continue to focus on those and push those as a reason why you might want to be with Macomb County. It's one of our competitive advantages, and we want to make sure that we're pushing that. And so that's the reason for those two personnel changes. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
First speaker is Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
I can second the onboarding issues.
Yes. Yep.
Happy to see you're heading that straight forward. I have a couple of questions. Reimbursements, what do you get reimbursed for?
So the pension system payments come out of our office, and managing that system happens in our office. I don't take any credit, although I should, with finance of how well our pension system's running. We're over 100% funded, so we're really happy about that. But they do reimburse our office for the cost of running that system in our office. I think that's north of 300 at this point.
Yeah, it is 310. And is that a set fee, or is that a portion of?
It's a set fee from what I understand, but I'd have to ask Steve that. Be specific.
You might as well just stay up there, Steve.
I always say it's 50-50. I'm gonna be wrong.
Steve has promised to be at all of these hearings, Commissioners.
It's pretty much a set fee, so we charge actual salaries
Okay.
for the folks in that office, plus some indirect costs.
All right, thank you. Second question, same as I asked the exec, contract services. What's under contract services?
We contract for, and again, I would probably look at Steve. I know we contract for medical experts. We contract for certain outside legal counsel. Those are different areas that we do contract out. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else in particular that would be a big item that we contract out. I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, it is great that you congratulate your team, and you do have a great team. But every team, to be successful, has to have a great leader. And I have met and worked for and around many HR directors, and the way you deal with situations, return calls immediately. I know I've dealt with you on quite a few issues. You're a people-oriented person, and I'm just proud to have you as our HR director in Macomb County. So thank you for all you do. That's all I have, Chair.
It's kind of you, Commissioner Ha. Mr. Delvin tells me that I have to give him credit for that every time I'm told that. So he's in the audience. I don't want to let that go by.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. I don't like following you, Commissioner Hall. Yeah, a couple of things, Andrew. So we all know about the Great Resignation and how we have so many positions unfilled throughout the county. Have you implemented new systems, functionality when it comes to sourcing candidates, is that showing up in the budget somewhere?
That is showing up in the budget. So
Where would that be?
advertising is an increase, a significant increase over what we had done in the past. I don't know that it's going to be enough, but frankly, Commissioner Farrington, I don't know that advertising is going to fix that.
Probably not.
I think, yeah, because everybody's advertising, right? We had, there was some signage.
Which area does that fall in? I'm sorry.
It's advertising directly. I think it
I'm
went.
looking at the summary here, so it's
Oh, I'm sorry.
contract services?
Supplies and services.
Thank you.
According to Steve Swingle, supplies and services.
Thanks. And I guess while I fully support the increase in wages, I mean, anyone that's tried to get a burger at Wendy's understands the prices have all gone up. So I understand that. But again, I'm going to be focused on the change in the last 3 years. Personnel over the last 3 years is 7 times the rate of inflation. Contract services is at 18 times the rate of inflation, and that just cannot happen. So that'll be where my focus is. I want to let you know.
Yep, I appreciate that, Commissioner. So the rate of inflation for salaries, that's going to be a consequence of our classification and compensation study. So I do believe that was the time period that covered that. And I think that over a long period of time, our people here in the county have had lower wages as a rule compared to their both in-county and out-of-county counterparts. So that's one of the areas that we've been focusing on.
I would agree on the wages part, though, like you said, the benefits are at a higher level. But explain to me what you meant by that over the long term versus short term as far as it showing up.
Yeah, so we had a classification and compensation study done in 2017, and then we implemented that study over the course of 2019 and 2020, some tail end in 2020. So when you see that inflation for wages, it's a little bit. I want to make sure
No, that
I'm
makes
choosing
sense.
my words.
I get that.
So it looks a little different because you're seeing 1% and 2% on salary schedules, but then we created all new salary schedules. We went from a couple hundred salary schedules down to, a couple hundred salary pay grades down to about maybe 30 pay grades. And you used to see different, let's take administrative staff, support staff, clerical staff, separated by $37 annually. You know, pay grade 27 would be $1,000, pay grade 28 would be $1,000 and $1,037. That's unmanageable, it's untenable, and frankly, it led to errors in the system. So combining that and making that more easily administrative is a big savings for us over time, I believe.
No, I do understand.
That's where the wage increase came from. As far as contract services for our office in particular, it really goes back to that very specific need. 312 Counsel is one thing that had happened a couple of years ago. We looked to them for help in that area. And then also, when it comes to...
But this is an increase over 3 years ago. So if it happened 3 years ago,
No,
the increase would
it's
be
within the last 3 years is what I'm speaking to. If that's...
Yep.
I think we're speaking the same language on that. So that was an important piece to us. Also, these independent medical examinations are going to become more and more important to us in human resources and probably utilized much more often because the issues that we're dealing with are so much more complex as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Andrew.
Commissioner.
My question was regarding the salary. I was just wondering who sets the minimum and maximum?
For whom?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, Commissioner, who sets the minimum and maximum salary for what?
There's the 2021 salary range, minimum and maximum. Who sets these numbers? And would it be possible to see like the actual salary for each position in addition to this minimum and maximum?
Yeah, you can always see the salary for any position that you like. The minimum and maximum are pay grades that are established countywide. We really establish them through the collective bargaining process. And then our non-affiliated employees follow along with the bargaining unit pay grades. So we really treat everybody very similarly when it comes to pay grades, whether you're unionized or you're not unionized. I think that answers your question. As far as actual salaries go, That's public information anybody can have, so we certainly can provide it to you.
Okay, thank you. And maybe this just might be my opinion, this next statement regarding the web developer salary. Is that a part-time position or full-time?
I don't have a web developer in my budget.
Okay. I just, and it's just my opinion, I think that that particular salary could be a lot more. I was very surprised when I saw that number. And I know one of your goals is to, increase the compensation to be more competitive with local businesses. So in my opinion, I think like that salary could be a little bit more, be more competitive with other, web developer jobs in the area.
Sure, Commissioner, and we all have particular positions that we see that we say, I don't know, that it would be hard to attract and retain with a salary in that area. I appreciate the input on the web developer, but I see that really countywide as a focus for us in human resources as we move forward. But as as indicated here, it'll
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it'll be a complex problem.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Phil.
A question about the community engagement specialist. I may have been flipping through all my books when you gave a description of what this person does. What's the plan for this person?
Yes. The community engagement specialist came on board last year. Kenny Williams is the gentleman's name. We're always working with our community to try to make sure that we're getting into our community, to make sure that we're getting applications from the widest swath of individuals possible. So that's one focus for Kenny as we move forward. I think the last time I was here was last week. We talked about the Dignity campaign. He's a partner in that campaign with us. And that's really the focus for us, is to try to make sure we're in the community, making sure we're getting applications and representation from all parts of our community. And that's a big piece of what he does.
So on our one-pager, it says also added a community engagement specialist during 2021, not a new position to the 2022 budget. I pulled out last year's budget and I don't see a community engagement specialist, but I do see it obviously in this budget book. What's the reasoning for that?
Yeah, it's Steve Smiegel's a liar. That's the reasoning.
Don't repeat that.
But please don't tell him. The community engagement specialist was hired in under Health and Community Services. We were hoping to have a director for that at some point in time. We don't have a director for that at this time. I've been working closely with Kenny on his work and in several other areas, consulting with him quite often. We felt we have space in our office for him. We would like for him to be of us as opposed to of Health and Community Services. So we requested from the executive's office to bring him over into our fold. They moved that without replacing the budget in Health and Community Services, I believe, is what Steve did. He'd have to answer that for Health and Community Services.
It sounds like something Steve would do. Smile if that's a yes.
I can answer it. Yeah, so what we did was we moved Kenny over to HR, and then we eliminated the administrative assistant position in Health and Community Services.
Got it. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's see if we have any more speakers. Don't see any more speakers. I did have a couple questions though for you, Andrew. So in regards to your contract services, your increase there, I'm looking back at your 19 budget, you had about 152,000, and then you're at 250 for this budget. Mm-hmm. Didn't really hear anything in regards to that $100,000 increase just over that 3-year term there. In your 2021 budget of $135,000, that's what you had in that line item. Are you anticipating to spend all that money this year?
I am hoping that we don't. So what I budget for is worst case scenario. And this year I don't believe we're going to hit that. We're involved in some negotiations right now with our 312 units. And I think because of the relationships that we've established, we won't end up going through the full 312 process. I don't believe I need to explain the 312 to you, Commissioner. I'm not trying to be dismissive in any way. But I know you have served up here before. So we are not going to have to go through that full process, which looks a lot like litigation, would cost a lot of money, and I think we're going to be able to avoid that. So I don't anticipate it this year unless things turn dramatically for the worse.
So are you saying then the 250 for this recommended budget is a little overinflated? I mean, is there room in there, or is it truly going to be necessary? Because I'm seeing the same amount for the next 3 years.
It really depends on what we see from our collective bargaining groups this upcoming year and other items that we might have to face. And when I say that, COVID-19 issues that come up, and that's really what I'm concerned about, Commissioner Sabatini, is different issues that come out of COVID-19 when it comes to mental health, being at work, period, accommodations, those types of things are big concerns of ours moving forward, and we're already seeing some of that start to percolate.
Conferences and training. Back in 19, you had about $5,000 in that line item. 2020, 17, last year 18, recommended 21.5. Just based on what's going on, it seems a little high to me. Are you anticipating having a lot of training and travel next year?
We keep hoping, but no. I believe next year we probably won't see a lot of travel and training.
Okay. And this is the first budget today that we've actually had some changes relative to employee count and your line items changing. I did notice in your worksheet that was provided to us that kind of like your 3-year outlook, your goals for 2021, there's a lot of gaps in here. I know you're asking for an increase in your budget, just even regards to your conferences and training. So if we can get that updated and submitted back to us, just so we have a clear understanding of what your goals are for 2022, that would be greatly appreciated, because I don't see it here in what was provided to us. So it may have been provided after the fact, but what we're seeing, it's blank. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Andrew. I'd like to touch on the internal services. I understand it's a complex calculation from Mr. Smeagol. But the employee count, it should be relatively proportional, I would think, to the employee count, which is going up a little over 10%, and yet that line item is going up around 20%. The other departments didn't seem to jump up quite like that.
So with the internal services, again, probably the largest portion is that indirect cost allocation, which there's a 2-year delay on. So if you have an increase in personnel for 2022, we don't know what the actual costs are across the county and the central service departments for 2022 till we do the 2022 plan. And based on timing, that doesn't really affect the budget for 2 years. It's like the pension contribution. By the time you go through the whole process, what happens in 1 year affects the budget 2 years later.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Right, so if you had an percentage increase in personnel, that'll hit in '24.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, I wanted to ask you, the community engagement specialist, what does that pay? What does that cost for the county?
Community engagement.
Or ballpark?
I believe that the community engagement specialist is $121,100 all wrapped in. So that's the entire cost of that position.
Thank you. Also, I wanted to ask, while this person, or I don't know if that person has a staff or not, is working on going out in the community to find people to come to work for Macomb County government, if you receive, is there a time period when you receive people's applications that you consider those applications? Or do you wait for a time period to see who's coming in for a position, or then you consider the applications that you received? I mean, what is the time period for that? How do you work that?
Sure. So all of our applications go up online. So the only way that we don't hire from online is when we hire through the Civil Service Department, and that's for deputies and dispatchers and corrections officers. So every other position in the county goes up online through a NeoGov system. Most of them are posted for between 5 and 10 days. That depends on what the department wants them posted for. But that is how we solicit all of our applications. They all go to NeoGov. We may advertise, as we've talked about earlier, for positions, but we send everybody to our NeoGov site, and then they're selected from that system. And so that when I say that what Mr. Williams is working on is engaging the community. What we're trying to do is make sure that the information about our jobs gets out every place, not just the places that we would, you put something up on Indeed. I don't know that I've ever looked at Indeed in my entire life. I know that our jobs go up there because everybody puts their jobs there, but I don't find it to be a great place to source candidates from. We want to make sure that the information in our jobs is getting out there and finding the right people in the right places throughout our county. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
so there's still, you still stay within the parameter of those time periods.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
That's important to us that we do.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no other speakers, I think all of their questions have been answered. Thank you, Andrew. If you could just follow up with our staff on any other questions that were brought up today, that'd be great.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you all very much.
Next department is the Treasurer's Office. Joe Biondo here presenting for the Treasurer's Office. I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved by Nard.
Moved by Nard, supported by Farrington. Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello, Commissioners. It's an honor to appear before you on behalf of Treasurer Rocca. I'm joined today by Paige Bashan and Christina Miller from the office as well. And I'll just kind of dig into it. I'll be as brief as possible, but I want to be thorough and make sure that all the commissioners and the folks that might be watching at home have the proper context to interpret the one-page executive summary. So before we dig into the proposed budget for next year, I thought it'd be important to kind of highlight what we've experienced in the Treasurer's Office over the last few years. So this is the 5th time that I'm presenting the budget on behalf of the Treasurer, and the process as it's played out over the last 5 years has been either one where the Treasurers has submitted plans or budgets where we cut in real dollar amounts, or we stay below the rate of inflation. If you look at the one-page summary, you can obviously see we stay below the graph line there for the CPI. That's a result, quite frankly, of the Treasurer always looking at the budget process each year for opportunities to be efficient and to quote-unquote trim the fat. Some of the ways we did that over this past year was to basically adapt to the environment we were in, namely dealing with COVID and processing lots of people as far as payments they make at the Treasurer's Office. One of the big changes we made was with our January show cause hearing. For some of you commissioners who never saw a show cause hearing held by the Treasurer's Office in this building pre-COVID, you would have been in for quite a sight when you walked into the first floor. You would have seen anywhere between probably 200 to 300 people in the first floor being processed there as a central intake spot for the Treasurer's Office. And we would bring groups of people up to the second floor, and the Treasurer or I would meet with them individually. Throughout the day, we would meet between 250 to 300 people and work out payment plans. Obviously, with COVID being a situation that we had to deal with, we needed to revise the whole process. So that was assigned to certain staff members, and I credit Paige as being one of the lead people working on that project. And what she was able to do for our office was develop a digital platform for our show cause hearing. It was quite clever. We were able to use the kiosk on the first floor, which is actually belongs to the prosecutor's office, but we sought his consent, he agreed. We used that as a part of the central intake processing, but before people even came into the building, they were given the opportunity to basically, through their phone, basically sign in that day, do everything via their phone. In fact, we encourage people when they came to the office to quote-unquote check in, park in the parking lot, check in with your phone. If there's no issues, go home and we'll deal with everything we have to deal with via email or phone or whatever we need to do to minimize the number of people in the office. And so that show cause went well. I believe we had over 330 hardship applications that went through that new digital intake process. So it's a way that we were being efficient and innovative with the resources that we ask for from you each year. And I wanted to highlight that because if you look at the biggest current year accomplishment, what I just described fed into that. And really when it says there it assisted 124 taxpayers, let me get to that. Before we get to that, let's talk about the fact that last year Treasurer Rocca suspended the tax foreclosure process for all family property owners, business people, everybody. And that's basically the main attraction for people to get a payment plan. You've been in foreclosure for you've been delinquent for 3 years, you're about to face tax foreclosure, please come in and get a payment plan. That's sort of like the big hook to get them into the office. And with that gone this year, we were able to work out 584 payment plans. And that's a great number of payment plans. And for the first time, as indicated in the summary, we had 124 taxpayers who were able to get their interest either reduced or completely waived because of the expanded Keep Macomb Your Home program that Treasurer Rocca implemented at the start of last year, foreseeing what was coming. We wanted to get ahead of any hardships people might be facing and wanted to give them options. So just to run through that number, because this is amazing to me, this has never been done before, it was never possible legally. This really started with the pay-as-you-stay legislation that was signed by the current governor at the beginning of the year, last year, to get this going. And we had 7 taxpayers, first time ever, qualified for the Tier 1 pay-as-you-stay, where they're looking at 0% interest. For those of you that know, when you hit the 3-year mark, even prior to that, you're paying 18% interest. So this makes a big difference for our residents that are able to get these plans. We had 22 taxpayers who qualified for the tax foreclosure avoidance agreement. It reduces the interest rate from 18% to 6%. And then we had 124 taxpayers, which were just the Tier 3. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. And that dropped the 18% to 12%. So again, I think that is a great accomplishment. More importantly, the treasurer does, and he credits the staff for being innovative and being willing to use the resource we have in new ways to make things work for us in a new way. So after highlighting that, I want to talk about the budget before you. The big change here, and the summary at the bottom kind of does a good job with what the situation is, but again, I want to make sure you guys have the appropriate context. So back in 2019, we had 2 openings as far as the office assistant senior positions. Now that's the entry-level position in the treasurer's office. So we get to about the point in the middle of 2019 where, 2020. We get to the point in 2020 where we're not hiring new people because of COVID, and so we make that work. We get through, and we get to the budget season where we're asked to, absorb like everybody else a 5% cut. Well, we figured we basically had gone most of that year without these 2 positions. Let's keep them on the budget but not fund them, so we comply with the 5% cut like everyone else is doing. And let's see how far that goes. And we were making a good go of it until we got to about December. And what happened in December and other things related to basically the end of last year is things changed from when we presented the budget. And what changed was a huge increase in the bookkeeping department in the treasurer's office. So in the treasurer's office, we handle the principal residence exemption denials issued by the state of Michigan. So when the state of Michigan issues a denial on a taxpayer who is claiming to have a principal residence exemption and thus getting a tax break, the state of Michigan conducts an audit and flags it. It falls to us at the Macomb County Treasurer's Office to correct the books and make sure that any additional amounts owing are collected. And so that's something that we have to take on. And so in 2019, there were 1,594 cases like that. In 2020, it jumped up to 2,854. So that's a 79% uptick. And our expectation is in 2021, it's going to be more like the 2020 figures. So that feeds into why we need these positions restored. In addition to the bookkeeping department's need for more employees in that department to deal with that, all of you are aware, I believe, of the Raffaelli decision that now allows for the public to submit claims to the county treasurer when we are gearing up for the tax auction. People can now, under the Raffaelli decision, submit a claim for any potential surpluses that might arise. As a foreclosing governmental unit, we're going to be responsible for processing all those claims. Our expectation from our discussions with other county treasurers through the state association is that there's going to be a lot of claims being submitted. People who have no interest to the title might submit claims just to see what happens. The bigger concern, though, is mortgage companies submitting claims on the off chance that they're able to collect anything in regards to their mortgage, because otherwise, normally mortgages get extinguished in the tax foreclosure process, they get nothing. So between the bookkeeping department, the Raffaelli decision, which impacts the tax foreclosure department, and also the land file department. Here's another thing that we've been dealing with the land file department. So the land file department in the treasurer's office has to basically deal with condo sites approvals, parcel splits, and combines. Right now, the average wait time is about 3 weeks. And compared to other counties, we could do a lot better. And so the hope is, between the bookkeeping department, we estimated maybe there's enough work there for 3/4 of a full-time position. For the tax reversion department, we're estimating probably 3/4 of a position there. And then probably for the land file department, anywhere between half to 3/4. So it comes out to 2 1/4 full-time positions. We figured we ask for the 2 office assistant senior positions we had previously so that we could say we're asking for those positions to be restored. And then the last major change as far as the positions is the reclassification, or what I would call the restoration, of the settlement officer positions. So every year that I've been here, we've always had a settlement officer position in the treasurer's office. This is the point person to deal with the local treasurers in terms of making sure all their paperwork's in order when they turn in the rolls for purposes of settling with the locals. It's very complicated. That person deals with the local treasurers on a regular basis. Long story short, after reviewing everything and trying this out, it did not work out the way we had thought it would. And so ultimately, in addition to our thinking on this, the employee in that position actually filed for a reclassification by the county. After reviewing it with the execs team and the finance department and HR, they agreed with us that it was appropriate that the person in that position have the position for the work that they're actually doing. And so the work never changed. The position title, I would argue, was an attempt to change it that did not work out as advertised. And so, again, we are asking simply for a restoration of those positions. Now, in order to try to trim in other areas of the budget to come up with funding for that restoration, we talked to the staff, as we do on all these things. We looked at the 4 part-time co-op positions, and while the consensus was we would like to keep those positions on, the staff recommendation, which the treasurer accepted, was it was more important to have the 2 full-time positions in, as opposed to college kids that might come in, get trained, be able to move some paperwork, but not necessarily dig into the difficult work that we do in the bookkeeping department. And so with that, I believe it covers everything that the treasurer wanted me to address as far as the context that you would need for this executive summary, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have first speaker is Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, couple of questions. Part of this is being a newbie, so I'm going to just ask all my questions.
Okay.
What are charges for services, and do you set those charges, or are they set by the legislature?
Yes, so the charges for services are, I believe, the tax certification fees that get charged at the office. So you come in and you want to register a deed, you pay the $5 tax certification fee, and basically we certify that the taxes are all paid up on this property, and you're able to proceed with filing it at the clerk's office. That's primarily what all that is.
Okay, so that's really the property transfer fees.
Right, or the tax rolls. People
tax
sometimes
rolls.
come in, they want to buy the tax roll to see who owes delinquent taxes, and typically they'll pursue them and make offers to buy the property. Sometimes we have companies that come in for that.
Okay, and those fees are set by the legislature?
Yeah, it's a fee that's pursuant to a state law. I believe the last time I talked to Mr. Creasha gives us a range that what the fee would be allowed for. And I think the $5 fee is like the minimum fee that we can charge. But I would defer to Corporation Counsel. I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Second question, conferences and training here took a giant leap. Wondering what that's about.
Yeah, I'm going to borrow the line used earlier. That's because Steve's alive. But no, all kidding aside, it is a serious question. That's something that, like every other part of the budget, we look at to cut if we can make a business case to cut. Now, what I would highlight regarding that is The reason why we have it at that level is that we use that primarily for the state Michigan Association of County Treasurers, so typically the treasurer and I will attend their meetings. But more importantly, when we started, we had a number of people in the office that were getting ready to retire. I think we had one person that dropped and a handful of other people that may retire. That $16,000, in addition to the conferences, is really primarily there as an insurance policy. Because of the technical nature of the work we do, all our staff have to be familiar with BSNA software. I know some of you are familiar with that. You have to know how to use BSNA software to process tax payments. And so the idea of that line item is to have enough money there so that if we do have people leave and new people come in, we can call BSNA if necessary, pay for them to have the proper training. Another issue we deal with is assessors coming into the land file department all the time, so sometimes we do trainings with the assessors. So that is primarily for training and yes, for conferences. And we've always kept it, I believe, at that limit every year.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and I believe he always wants to cut it down because we never use most of it. It's there as a, in case we need it, and the hope is we don't need it because people stay on and they don't leave us mid-year.
Okay. And then repairs and maintenance. What kind of repairs and maintenance do we have in the treasurer's office?
I'd have to double check with Steve. Steve, do you know off the top of your head on that one? I know it's only.
Dave.
Yeah.
I think it's maintenance agreements on copiers. That's correct. Pretty
Okay.
much.
Oh, okay.
Don't want to lie.
I was just trying to imagine, you know, if you guys are like beating up the desks or something,
No.
what the deal is.
In fact, we treat them quite nicely.
That's what I figured. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Joe. I just want to take Commissioner Hawes' place and say thank you for keeping personnel at or below the rate of inflation. Beat you to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. I hate following Commissioner Farrington, really I do. Joe, in reading the postscript down here added back to office assistant seniors that were unfunded,
yes, sir.
It shows the total cost to the general fund is $94,100. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what's listed as the net, yes, sir.
So is that saying eliminating the 4 part-timers plus the 94,000 equals adding the 2 full-timers?
I think that's what.
Am I reading that
Steve,
correct?
That's correct, right?
Oh, this is Steve too?
Well, I figure I got him here.
So the 94 is the cost of all of those moves. Funding for
Combined.
the 2 coming back, the reclass, and then the elimination of the interns.
Got it.
The net cost of all of those moves is 94.
You might as well just stand there. Not that I have another question for you.
No.
I think it was a year ago, and I'm going to ask the clerk the same question. Both you and Larry approached us about establishing a recollection program of those organizations, elected officials that were behind in their filing fees or whatever the penalties. And the last I looked, which was about a week ago, was 1.1 million across all of Macomb County. And again, I'm going to ask Tony the same question. Have you guys implemented any action on recovery with that type of program? Because the commitment was from us that whatever you guys collected, we would return possibly 25% of that.
Yeah, so I can report on the fact that they have been collecting on those. Paige is our point person on that, but I can tell you that I believe we resolved one not too long ago where someone came in and signed an agreement. When I last spoke to Frank Krisha, who's the lead attorney from Corporation Counsel on this, to get an update, he was dealing with the situation that he couldn't find process servers. I don't know if that's changed. I haven't gotten a report from him, but I can certainly do that and send an email update on this is the current status of our collection efforts as far as where we're at right now. We have been pursuing it.
Is our prosecutor's office involved at all?
We had a meeting initially at the beginning of the year. I don't recall exactly. I want to say maybe February, March. The meeting was between the clerk, the prosecutor, the treasurer, corporation counsel. The discussion was to the effect of whether or not criminal prosecutions would be warranted. The determination at that meeting is that if any of the electeds became aware of anything criminal, they would just report it to the prosecutor and he would take that up. As far as I know, that has not occurred yet, but that was the extent of that conversation, sir.
So we have to add Pete to the conversation now as well.
For the criminal stuff, yes. For the civil side, it would be strictly the clerk's office for anything less than 60 days due and owing to the county. Anything 60 days or older would be the treasurer's responsibility to collect on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's for Steve.
Okay.
Joe, your department was just the unlucky one to come before the sheriff's department. Steve, in two of our departments in the county, the deputy has a max that's higher than the actual director. The treasurer's office and the sheriff's office are those two. Is that because we did a 1% increase for countywide electeds and it's just naturally the progression for the other employees to be higher eventually?
Yeah, in part, yeah. So you've got deputy level folks generally getting what other non-union or union folks are, in this case 2% for next year. And if you do that enough times,
right,
then obviously your graph goes like that.
Okay, yeah, those were the two departments that I saw. It's just starting to trickle over, so I didn't know if that was common to trend. I hadn't noticed that before, but just poking through, I noticed those two departments. So I figured that was the case, but just wanted to make sure. Nothing against you, Joe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any other speakers, but I do have some questions. So
Yes, sir.
Joe, in regards to the conferences and training,
Yes.
so I looked at your worksheet and you've got about $6,000 there in requests as far as conferences.
Right.
Yet the number is $16,000 in the request.
Yes.
So now you're talking about in regards to some training relative to staff changes and BSA software. And do you think $10,000 is a little excessive in regards to that difference there? Is that something that's really necessary?
Yeah, when we first looked at that, the situation, I believe, was we had several people in the drop, and so the concern was if they all left, we would need a substantial amount of money to train several people to get them, to a level where they actually can process a payment. That was our best estimate of what that could potentially, worst case scenario be. I can say that obviously the historical practice in our office has been to stay way below that line item, and our expectation would be pretty much in line with past years. It's just there on the off chance it spikes, we have it. That's our position. It's there as an insurance policy.
Okay. So just clarity here for me, maybe I'm just misunderstanding this. So in regards to the new positions that you're asking for,
yes,
is this a net zero in your total employee count, or were
Yes.
you requesting employees and you were not given them during the budget process?
So I'm sorry, restate your question so I understand.
Is your employee count, based on what you're asking for in the new positions, is that a net zero for your employee count?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
Yes, because they treat the 4 part-times as halves, and with the 4 halves going away, then the 2 office assistant seniors being restored, it's a wash.
Okay,
Yeah.
so basically you're still at 26 based on your budget here?
Yeah, nothing changes. It's a wash in terms of the position count. Yes, sir.
Great. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. My question was the same on those 2 positions, those 2 office assistant seniors. Those were tax collectors? What exactly do they do?
So the office assistant seniors is basically the entry-level position in the treasurer's office. So they would be doing all the clerical work. Now, depending on what department they're in the treasurer's office, it would impact, specifically what they're working on. The reason why we need these 2 office assistant seniors restored is because of the large increase in technical work, primarily in the bookkeeping department with respect to state PRE denials, and the technical work in the tax reversion department of evaluating these claims that are going to be filed under Raffaelli for the tax auction surplus. So very technical work, but clerical work, Obviously, it has to be all in order and proper because of what the subject matter is, the collection of taxes. We can't, obviously, we don't want to make any mistakes when it comes to money.
How have you been managing so far without them? You've been doing the job without them so far?
So that's a great question. We had to do a little outside of the box thinking with the resources that you guys were kind enough to approve last year. And so what we did was I worked with great people over in Human Resources. I see Andy left. What we did was we took the money that was in the budget for the part-time co-op positions, and we were able to beg for Kathy Trombley, who had retired from the treasurer's office and had years and years of experience, to come back part-time. And so that's holding the bookkeeping department together, appropriately so, until such time as we can get this budget in place for next year.
I'll talk to you some more about this offline. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, please vote. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everyone.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item is commissioners' comments. So I'll start those off. We have started the budget process. So first day went pretty smoothly, actually, with no technical issues. So thank you, staff, for getting everything resolved before the meeting started. Just to remind everybody in regards to any budget amendments that they do want to make, I talked to staff, and they are going to be creating a Google Docs form so that if you have any amendments that you want to bring up, obviously you'll bring them up in committee, and then they'll go on that worksheet. It'll be in real time, so you'll be able to see it, and the staff will update it. However, if you do want something added on there, you're going to have to work with the staff, put it in writing so they can properly put it on that worksheet, so that everyone is clear as to what you're asking for in that amendment. And then as we see that and we go through that, rather than going back and forth in committees and voting on amendments, we're going to handle that specifically in one day that we already have budgeted for the budget. So if you have any questions about that, please see me or please see the staff. Any other commissioner comments? I don't see any others on the list. So we will move to item number 8, public participation. So this is the second opportunity here for the public to speak in regards to any item, up to a maximum of 3 minutes. You have the floor. If you would just state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Diane Kelleher. I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Diane Kelleher. I am a resident of Warren, and I'm my first commissioners meeting, so it's good to see that everybody in the departments is fiscally responsible and that you're keeping them at task. I believe that the clerk's office is going to bring up an item for $16,000 for an audit of the Macomb County elections. And I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of folks that don't want you to spend that money on that. There are a lot of other programs that could use the money. I'm sure your departments would agree. The reason for this is to placate people and make them feel better. I don't believe that an adult needs to be made feeling better just because they carry a picket sign and have a loud voice. So some of my concerns are they're talking about getting a company in called Pro V&V, and I would like to know if anybody knows when this is coming up on the docket, because I would like to be back, because I do have some questions on that. And I want assurances that at that point, are they going to corrupt the machines? Is that going to be a problem here so that we're going to have to pay more? $16,000 for an audit doesn't sound like a lot, but there have been no issues with our voting, and I want you all to just kind of be aware that just because there are a lot of loudmouth people out there, it's not everybody in the districts. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Going once? Going twice? We'll close public participation. Need a motion to adjourn. Motion
Second by
Nard,
Zinner.
seconded by Zinner. Have a great rest of the day, Commissioners.